池上彰と
増田ユリヤの
YouTube 学園。
では今回は激戦州の取材をまず紹介していきたいと思います。で、激戦州で一番注目されているのは、やっぱりその選挙人というのは19人もいるペンシルベニア州だと思うんですけれども、そのペンシルベニア州で、禁書の動きが活発になってるっていう話を聞いたんですね。池上さん、禁書ってわかりますよね。
禁書だから本を禁じるって書くんですけど、これ例えば図書館とか学校でこういう本は読んじゃダメだよって、それを撤去する、禁止するという、こういう運動なんですね。
はい。それがですね、このところ急激に増えてるっていうデータがあるんです。こちらご覧いただきたいと思います。で、そのグラフがあるんですけれども、2020年までは、300冊とか200冊とか、そのぐらいでずっと推移してきているものなんですが、2020年を境に急激に増えてるんですよね。
これは全米でのデータですか？
はい。
全米でこんなにたくさんの本がこれは禁止だ、図書館から撤去みたいな動きが広がってるってことなんですね。
そうなんです。で、禁書というのはもう、全米の、各地の、州、それから、その学校がある区とか、教育委員会とか、いろいろな、レベルで、されていくようなものなんですけれども、本当にそれでいいのかという疑問を持って、で、子どもたちに対して、やはり読むべき本を禁止にするのはやめようというような動きがある学校があるということで取材に行ったんですね。で、その禁酒が増えたのが2020年という年なんですけれども、これは実はミネソタ州で起きたジョージ・フロイドさんの事件って清美さん覚えてますか？
黒人が白人の警察官に首をずっと押さえつけられて亡くなったという事件ですね。
はい、そうなんです。で、今回私が取材に行った学校というのは、今から20年近く前に、多様性を大事にする学校ということで、その白人の方だけではなくて、いろいろな人種の方たちが一緒に行くような学校になって、それが評価されてきた学校だったんですね。ただ、その事件が起きたことによって、やはり有色人種の方たちが、自分たちの立場が脅かされるんじゃないかという、特に高校生が心配になるんじゃないかと言って、先生たちがどういう形で本を読ませようかと考え始めたそうなんです。でも、その動きに対して、やはり難しい問題が起きてきたということなんですね。で、実際、それは乗り越えた問題ということにはなるわけなんですけれども、どんな活動をしてきたのかということを中心になってやってらしたホッジ先生にお話を聞いています。
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good to meet you. I'm Mr. Hodge, Ben Hodge.
Yuria.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to meet you
Yuria.
too.
Nice to meet you. Come on in.
Thank you.
Welcome to room 130. Hello, come on in.
This is your room.
Yes, this is my room, my classroom. Yes, I've been teaching in here for approximately 16 years.
16 years.
Yes. This is our Panther Anti-Racist Union library. In this library, we have a series of books, several books that were either banned in our district in 2020 to 2023 or in districts across the United States. And so we had people send these books to us. And we have them now available for students to take out and use if they'd like to read them. So they're accessible to students, as we believe very strongly that books should be in the hands of as many people as that are interested in learning about things.
なるほど。例えばどんな本がありますか？
We have a variety of books that were banned in our district. We have children's books that were banned. There was a Dr. Seuss book that was in Spanish that was banned. We had books primarily that dealt with anti-racism or racist conversations about how to deal with people from different cultures and backgrounds and informing people on how to do that. This was one of the more popular books that was banned, called Stamped. And then we also had narrative stories, such as this one by Angie Thomas, The Hate You Give, which is a story about a black teen who her friend is a victim of police brutality and violence, and her steps that she takes as a young person to help protest and fight back against that. So it's not just nonfiction, it's fiction as well. And we also have books that typically that are for younger folks too. So Hidden Figures, this is a story of the 3 mathematicians who were African American in the 1960s that helped NASA get to the moon for the first time. They were mathematicians. They were a wonderful historical story. We've had books, unfortunately some of our kids' books have been taken out because we're using them for another event, but there's a book called I'm Enough by Grace Byers, which is this beautiful children's book about believing in yourself, and there's this beautiful black woman, black girl on the front of the cover with this great hair, and she's talking about how she's enough and how important it is for her to see herself as somebody of value and worth. That was also banned. So it ran the gamut of children's books to nonfiction, to fiction, and to historical memoirs as well.
まずこの団体はどういう経緯でできたのかということを教えていただけますか？
In 2020, after the murder of George Floyd in the United States, victim of police brutality, our country faced what we are calling a racial reckoning, and people were aware now of some of the situations and plights of some of our black and brown brothers and sisters in our country. And during that time, I, like many Americans, went through a process of reevaluating my concept and understanding of race. And so I picked up a particular book. It's called Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. And in that book, she challenged the reader particularly white readers, like myself, to take a next step action. And so the creation of the Panther Anti-Racist Union came out of an action step in response to what was going on in our country with the racial unrest. And it included an extension basically of what I was doing within the walls of my classroom here, which was creating community, bringing people together, sharing stories, educating about what was really going on in the lives of these young people and myself. And so I wanted to create a club that allowed for that to happen with people who weren't taking my classes. And the Panther Anti-Racist Union was formed. We met remotely in COVID, and we talked about Black history and learned about John Lewis and gathered and talked about things that were bothering us and frustrating us. And then we moved into activism mode and protesting once the book bans happened later on. But the story starts with an action step in response to what was happening racially in this country.
ジャクソン先生はどのように関わられてこられたんでしょうか？
That summer, when George Floyd was killed, murdered by police officers, guidance counselors who are school counselors and teachers got together over the summer when school was closed, and we wanted to put a resource list together of books that would help teachers to talk with children who might have questions about what was happening. And it was during that time I felt very uncomfortable. As one of the only Black teachers that was involved in that, I felt that their work was not going to be met well by some of the racists who were on the school board, and that's what they were. They were racists. They were people who did not like Black and brown people. They believed in white supremacy, and I was right. That work that we did, we gave to our administrators who applauded us. It went up the chain to the bigger administrators, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, who then activated the diversity committee, and there were subcommittees that met. There were teachers, guidance counselors, there were community members, there were administrators, and there were school board members. And unfortunately, it was the school board members who were racist. And they decided that these books were anti-American, anti-family, anti-police, anti-religious, and that they needed to go. And then they turned to the teachers, and they wanted to get rid of the teachers as well. And any teacher who was on that list was identified as a red flag teacher. And we started taking our names off of the lists for fear that we would lose our jobs. I'm used to it as a Black person in America. Walking around this country is like having PTSD. You never know how you're going to be treated. So I was used to it, and I kind of shrugged my shoulders. It was just another day in the United States of America. But then my friend Ben comes into my classroom and he puts his head down and he says, this is what I want to do. I want to activate the club. I want to do something. And I knew they would come for him. And I knew they would come for the children. And I wasn't going to allow that to happen. So that's how I got involved.
パティ先生がその関わろうとなぜ思われましたか？
It was time for me to speak my truth to power. It was time for me to stop hiding, to stop staying from beneath the rock, and to stand on my own 2 feet, and to shout at these people that what they were doing was wrong, and that I would not be silenced anymore. You would not erase me. I was here. American history is my history, and it has many colors to it, and people need to accept that. I'm not here to shame children. I'm not here to guilt children. I'm here to present the truth to children. You know, whether it's my truth or the Native American truth, all these truths can be shared, and no one has to be ashamed or guilty of it. The idea is to never let some of the atrocities in American history ever happen again, and that is for our future.
日本で禁書運動っていうと、例えば、わいせつな文書は子供たちの目に触れないようにしようとか、そういう運動っていうのはあるんですけど、今のこの話を聞いてみると、例えば人種差別の実態であるとか、それとどう戦ったとかいう、そういう、本当に子供たちに知ってほしいような本、そういうものをそもそも読ませないという運動があるんですね。ちょっとびっくりだな。
私もそのジョージ・フロイドさんの事件からその人種差別ということがまた激しくなって、で例えば黒人の方たちがこういった問題を克服したとか、あと話の中に出てきましたけれども、ドリーム NASA という黒人の女性たちが1960年代にその月にロケットを打ち上げるという、その時に活躍をしたという話がありましたよね。きっと池上さんもご存知じゃないかと思うんですけれども、映画にもなったこの話の元々の本を禁書にするって聞いて、本当にびっくりしたんですね。で、そこまで分断というか、教育の場にまでそういう問題が持ち込まれているということにすごく驚いたんです。で、そうした中ですね、ここの学校では子どもたちのために何ができるか、もともと多様性を特徴とした学校としてこれまで来たという学校だったわけですけれども、ホーチ先生という最初活動を始めた、ホーチ先生が声をかけた黒人のジャクソン先生という先生、この先生は本当に雇い止めになりそうになったわけなんですよね。で、それが今回のその禁書の問題と、それから禁書に対して積極的だったのが、教育委員会のメンバーの方たちだったということなんですけれども、生徒の間にもその問題が耳に入るようになりまして、で、それを生徒が親に話すような事態にもなって、問題というか、この話が展開をしていくということになるんですね。じゃあ、この問題がどういう形で、解決までは言わないんですけれども、展開をして、そしてジャクソン先生が雇い止めにならずに、この学校に、勤め続けていられるようになったかということをインタビューでお聞きいただきたいと思います。
レッドフラッグリストの後、先生が入れられてしまったにもかかわらず、その活動に参加をして、そして今日までに至ることまで、どういう経緯があったんでしょうか。
The saving grace was children who went home to their parents and told the parents what was happening, and those parents went to the polls and voted out the racists that were on the school board. The board of directors that controls the school district, they are elected positions, and the community spoke. Our administrators here at the school knew what we were doing was very good, but they had to be cautious. And we're good teachers. We're very, very good teachers, and they know that. And we're very good with children. When children are troubled, they seek out one of us. And they knew they had that. So as long as we maintained that and we were good teachers and there was no reason to get us in trouble, our administrators sort of kept their distance. As for my teaching colleagues, I'm disappointed in many of them. Particularly in my department, because they were afraid and they were removing books from their classroom libraries, which to me is cowardly. But if you're a white person, you can do that. You can hide. You can go back into your privilege, and you don't have to worry about that. I don't have that privilege. I will never be able to hide. I am a black woman, and I am proud, and I'm going to speak my truth. I'm not going to hide behind anything. This is wrong, what they were doing, and I was going to tell them that they were wrong, and I wasn't going to be worried about my job. I can find another job. So the relationships were cool. We'll just say that. They were cool. They were a little distant. But in the dark corners, there were atta girls, if I can say that. There were, go get them. So that was encouraging. But it was the children who saved the day, going home to their parents. I think it was that year we had one of the largest voter turnouts, and that was because of children going home to their parents. And may I add, we followed all the rules. We made certain that we followed all the rules and that the children followed all the rules. We always spoke to our administrators to help them understand why we were doing what we were doing, and we listened to anything they asked us to do with regard to our free speech. And I think that made the difference as well.
そのジョージ・フロイドさんの事件があったにもかかわらず、レッドフラッグリストの先生が入れられてしまったというのは、やはりあの事件が分断を生んでしまったというような状況だったんでしょうか。
It's always been here. It's always been here. It's always been frightening because you can see the racism that happens to black and brown and other people, even the Asian hate. It has always been there. But I feel George Floyd was a trigger, and I also feel the presidency of Donald Trump made it very clear that the racists could say and do whatever they wanted to, and just exacerbated the problem. And people, white people who feel they are supreme, that they are superior, are trying to show their dominance and hold on to power, essentially, because now they have to share the field with people who don't look like them. And some of them don't like that. And I'm not saying all white people, because I feel most white people are decent. I think it's a very small percentage. And in our district, it was a very small percentage of people who were casting this hate. At the board meetings, there were probably 6 to 8 white women who were behind the book ban. That's it. That's it. But they made it sound like it was the entire school district. But it was an entire school district that shut them down. We actually had a book distribution that was done by Hannah Shipley, who was a TikToker. 4,000 books that were on the banned list. The community came, they were gone in 15 minutes.
禁書っていうのは必要だと思いますか。そこはどうでしょうか。
Very unnecessary. Very unnecessary.
なぜでしょう。
Parents have the right to decide what their children read. And parents should be raising their children to walk away from certain things. Cigarettes, with drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. And if there are certain books that parents do not want their children reading, that needs to be a conversation between the child and their parent.
Anti-book banning does not mean that we believe that young people or out of age level or reading level should have access to books that are either not appropriate for their age. We're not saying that, you know, 4th graders should read Push, or 4th graders or 3rd graders should read intense, violent material. We believe that there are age levels, but we just believe that access to representation and other stories should be accessible to everyone.
この、禁書のこういった動きというのは、この大統領選挙に影響するものでしょうか。
God, I hope so. I hope so.
So frightened.
I hope so. I hope people recognize that it is very clear that there is one political party in this country that is pushing legislation to ban materials and to essentially erase American history.
And eliminate the rights of Americans.
There is one political party that is actively saying that we need to do these things so that we can get rid of one of the greatest parts of American society in our public education system. So, to your answer, I hope, God, I hope so, people pay attention to the book banning issue, because any society that bans books, history tells us, it does not end well. It does not end well. And I hope and pray that Americans remember, how we respond to fascism and regimes that are banning books and materials. I hope that we can remember that.
一つの政党が推進って言ってますけど、要するにこれ共和党のことですよね。トランプさんが所属している共和党がこういう禁止運動を推し進めているという話なんですけど、子供たちが先生を救ったっていうのが、この心温まる話ですよね。アメリカの教育委員会の教育委員って実は選挙で選ばれるんですね。日本の場合は自治体の長が教育委員を指名して議会が承認してということになるんですけど、アメリカの場合は選挙で教育委員が選ばれるもんですから、白人至上主義者の教育委員が選ばれてしまうと、こういう差別に関する方は全部撤去しろっていう話にもなってしまう。それに対して子供たちがこんなことがあるよと言って、親たちがじゃあこの教育委員を落とそうじゃないかと言って別の人を当選させた。その結果、この禁書が止まったということですね。選挙でこう教育委員が決まるという形になっているもんですから、こういう問題が起きるし、また問題が起きるけれども、その選挙によってそれがこう変えられるということでもあるんですね。
そうですね。だから今回の場合には、やっぱりその当事者である生徒たちが声を上げたっていうことが非常に大きなポイントになってくると思うんですね。ただ、その生徒たちだって高校生ですから、その世の中の動きに対してね、なかなか声を上げにくい部分もあったと思うんです。でも、ことこの本を禁止されるということに対して怒りを覚えて、初めて自分の意見を持って行動を起こしたという高校2年生のミヤさんにお話を聞いています。
ね、今何の日付のこと聞いてたんですか？
There are the year that I went to the meetings, it was in 2022, and pretty much the book that was being challenged was Push. And Push is about a girl's story with, sexual abuse from her family and her way of overcoming it and different challenges that she had to go through, as well as challenges from home.
この本が禁書されたことはやっぱりショックだったんでしょうか？どんなふうに感じましたか？
When I first heard about books being banned, I was very angry, and I was inspired to go to the board meetings and say something about it, because whenever I'm angry, I don't really like showing it, so I write. And pretty much what I did was I sat down in my room one day and I heard Mr. Hodge talk about in one of the meetings that we did that, we could always go to the board meeting and say something, or at least just sit there to let the people know we're here and, we're taking this seriously. And so for me, sitting down just wasn't enough, and at that time I was really discovering that I do have a voice that matters, because I've always been talked over when I was smaller, and even at that time I was always talked over. So hearing somebody else getting their voice taken away completely, I just felt like I had to do something about it. I could not let them just take away somebody's voice like that, especially a voice as powerful as that has meaning and it has a storyline. Because one of the things that they said for Push, and Mr. Hodge told me this, was that they said that it was improper literature because of the narrative that she put in the book, which was, it was this black girl from New York, and she was, struggling with things. So I was very angry that they would ban something like that.
その声を上げた結果ってどういう形になりましたか？
Not only did I talk at the board meetings, a lot of other students talked at the board meetings too, and they said how unfair it was, and some of them even shared poetry that they made, and some of them, they just sat there, and even though they sat there, it would still show the board we need books. Books aren't to be banned, they're meant to be shared. because everybody has a voice. And the people at the board meetings who were against the books, they said that like they're trying to push a narrative onto us, you know? And I've heard this from home too. And it's like, no, they're not trying to push anything onto us because everybody has a choice to read the book, you know? There are some books that the school teaches us in the English system where the school requires us to learn about it, but none of those books were being challenged. The books that were being challenged were the books that were in the library, and it was the students' choice to read it. And that I just didn't get why they would ban something if it was a choice and not something that was required.
この活動をするようになって何かご自身の中で自分の中で変わったことはありますか？
After everything went down, I definitely felt like I had a voice. And like I said, I didn't really feel like I had control of my own life before that. I didn't really feel like my voice mattered because at home I would rely on other people to like talk for me, and I really did struggle with that. And at like the board meeting, just seeing everybody come together and seeing everybody use their voice, it also inspired me to like pick up a megaphone and be like, you know, this is wrong, you know? And so if anything changed, it was definitely my perspective on myself and on my own intelligence as well. I just started realizing that maybe like, even though I love my parents, maybe it's some of the things that they did teach me was just not right, you know? And I definitely started having my own perspective on certain things. I started having my own opinion on certain things. And I started learning that opinions are very important, you know? Even though you may think that yours is right, it's still very important to respect other people's opinions because that's how fights start and that's how unnecessary stuff like book bans start especially.
自分たちの活動がどういう形になっていってほしい、その活動の中の目標みたいなものっていうのはあるんでしょうか？
The point that we were trying to reach is like, you don't ban books. That's just, you know, it's something that should be common sense, like I said, but, you know, that's pretty much the point. You don't ban books, you don't silence people for what they have to say. And if you truly do have a problem with that book, and you truly do believe that that book should not be taught to kids, then you can make sure that it's not taught to your kids, and it's not even taught to your kids. You can make sure that your kid doesn't check it out in the library. So, yeah.
できると思いますか？
Part of me does believe that we can, but also the other part of me is just like, dang, because it's very disappointing that we worked so hard and we did reverse the ban, you know? And it was just like, yes, you know, like I thought at the time we had won the war, but, you know, we didn't. In reality, we didn't. We won a battle upon many and many and many other battles, you know? And like, we'll take that, you know, I'll take that because at least it's something, you know? At least our district listened to us. But I feel bad and I feel for those, you know, other students who have to deal with their district silencing, you know, their education, you know, they're limiting the resources that they can have. And it's very disappointing because, you know, like Mr. Hodge said, and he showed us on the chart that one year there was 3,000 and now it's like 10,000. And that's more than I thought that could be banned. And they're just banning books at this point to ban books. And it's very disappointing and it's very sad. I'm not saying that it's impossible for us to reverse book bans everywhere. I'm just saying like it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be very worth it in the end. And it all just depends on who we put in that chair and who we put above us to make those choices, you know? So I do believe that we together, when we go together and we as citizens, you know, we come and we put whoever in charge and they will reverse the bans. And that's why it's very important for people to put the research when it comes to electing officials.
いや、すごいね、高校生とは思えないしっかりした発言で、なんか、この運動を通じて、本当にこの子が成長したっていうことが分かる発言だったし、本当に本って本当に大切な存在なんだなっていうことを私たちに改めて知らせてくれたね。
本当に禁書の動きがね、これだけ高まっているということは残念なことでもあるんですけれども、このミヤさんっていう生徒さんは、ご自身があれなんですね、そんな積極的な方じゃなかった。でも、この本の問題に触れて、初めて自分でこう怒りを覚えて、自分のこと以外のことで行動を起こすようになったということを言ってたんですよね。だから、とてもこう残念な問題ではあるんですけれども、やはりいろいろな意見を戦わせる、違いがこう生む問題というのを解決していくっていうことがエネルギーに変わるし、それがやっぱりこう、なんていうんですかね、世の中を活性化させるというか、そういうエネルギーにつながっていくんだなということを、こうしみじみ感じた取材だったんです。
それにしてもね、アメリカってこう言論の自由とか表現の自由をとっても大切にする国だっていうイメージを持ってたんだけど、でもそういう中で、いやいや、これを読んじゃいけない、読ませないんだみたいな運動をする人たちがいるんだっていう、改めて今のアメリカっていうのは、そんな風にもこう、変わりつつあるんだなってことも驚いたよね。
そうですね。ちょっと時代の逆戻りといいますか、やっぱり例えば白人至上主義なんていう言葉も聞かれるようになっていますけれども、その人種によって自分たちがこう優位を持ちたいとか、そういったこう気持ちがまた出てきている、この社会背景というのはまた何なのかということも考えていかなければいけないのかなということを強く感じた取材でした。
はい。
で、続きなんですが、また激戦州、この後は若い方たちで共和党の支持をしているという、その学生さんたちが一体何を考えているかということをウィスコンシン州で聞いてきましたので、次回はそれをお伝えしたいと思います。
はい、YouTube 学園から新しい本が生まれました。歴史で読み解く世界情勢の基本。これを読めば混迷する世界情勢が見えてきます。
チョコレートで読み解く世界史。チョコレートの歴史を知ると今の世界情勢もわかります。
美味しい本ですね。
はい、ぜひ味わってください。